tree of knowledge was truly the tree of making a good decision now that puberty has set in, and we'll get more into that later. But Adam is the beginning, and those who followed Adam, like we call people who follow Christ Christians, the people who followed Adam were called the people of Adam. They were the Adams. And in the Bible it actually says, and it says, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, and it mentions that he created Adam, male and female created he them. They were both called Adam in that particular version. Now there's two versions in the Bible. Most people don't know that. There's the first one that produces Cain and Abel. There's the second one that produces a different phenomena. And in that one, they are one. But we won't get into that right now because we're going to get more fully into that later. But that's the idea, that we were awakened with the breath of the Spirit to become responsible, to make decisions, to start moving towards the light and not continue to stay trapped in the past and in the old ways of doing things which was not responsible. Moving on to the stage of Noah.
So we continue to the Noahic stage, which is search. This is the spirit of hope, search for truth, the possibility of impending doom, societal pressure, the concepts of justice versus injustice, and the family, which is the foundation of civilization.
These are just issues that come at the stage when we find ourselves trying to find out what the meaning and purpose of our life is. We go on a search for what's real and true. We also have a sense that something's coming. We can sense the disaster if we fail to meet the challenge of our own life. This isn't necessarily a societal impending doom. It can be a sense that if we don't act wisely, our own life can be set aside. We feel the pressure of society all around us. We want fairness and justice. That's very important, particularly for ourselves. And we become aware that family seems to be and should be and is the foundation of civilization. And we're going to get in and explore that more, because we're going to explore these two worlds of Adam and Noah as the course unfolds.
So now we continue to the Abrahamic stage, the stage of love, the blessing.
Now these are referring to certain writings that identify this stage as the stage of love, or the valley of love. It's also in another place in the Yagan referred to as a realm, I suggest, of blessing. And you'll see when you study the story of Abraham, it's all about being blessed, because he makes the right decisions, the people make the right decisions. But continuing on.
Well, I guess since we're at this stage, my question is, that concept of ignorance is bliss. I mean, we're moving into that realm right now, because we're moving out of ignorance, and we're starting to acknowledge responsibilities.
Yes.
So we're moving beyond that stage. And how would you address people who are really frightened by the responsibility and feel like it's just going to destroy the fundamentals of their life, which you referred to earlier, the material comforts, the career, the family life, or the material aspects of the family life? What is it? Can you just give us a prelude of what's beyond?
There's enough ignorance in being a teenager that most teenagers are less afraid of what's going to happen in the future. In fact, they're at the point where they don't yet, their ignorance is still pretty strong, but they do feel that they have to start making decisions. And this is what causes what they call the rebelliousness. At the same time, a fearlessness that they should have. We look at them and say, aren't you guys conscious of what you're doing? But it's a reckless period. And in fact, if you look back, the period of time from early when civilization began, about 6,000 years ago, to the present day, I suggest you we've just gone through 6,000 years of our teenage years as a species. And it looks like it's been run by a bunch of teenagers, if you look at human history. It hasn't been run by anybody that's very wise in general. And so it's a combination of responsibility, knowledge, and ignorance. It's kind of like, it's a period of time where we have to test out the limits of these things. And of course, in testing out the limits, it can be very painful, it can be very destructive, or it can be very enlightening, and it can be very exciting. There's a right way to be a teenager, and there's an unwise way, and we notice many people lose their way in the teenage years, in the days when they should listen to and observe those who've gone before them and see the different choices that were made and the results and gain from it. So they still need their parents as coaches and guides, not as control agents as much and more as when they were children. And when they're children, they had to do everything that their parents told them pretty much. But when you become a teenager, you start flapping your own wings a little bit. And while you're still there at the protection of your parents, you're trying out your newfound freedoms and use of conscience. So I suggest to you, everybody goes through it. Some do well in it, and others, unfortunately, get completely off track during this period of time. I personally went almost completely off track during this period of time, but regained my balance before it was over. So then we come to the Abrahamic.
So the Abrahamic stage is equated with the valley of love and also the concept of the blessing. And this is the spirit of oneness. And we begin to discern the covenant with God, recognizing one's Lord, belief, love, and fear of God, and seeing the beauty of His truth.
This is the stage where you're out looking for truth, you're out looking for what it is you wish to, shall we say, hang your hat on. And I suggest to you, when you find something beautiful, something that rings true to you, it encourages belief, love, and fear of God, because this is a stage where you have to make a decision for God rather than just do what your parents told you. And this is where you have to stand. We, in the Baha'i faith, would say this takes place at 15, where you have to make that decision. And you have to recognize one's Lord as being your Lord, and where you make a covenant with God. And this is where the spirit of oneness is introduced. Baha'u'llah brings the spirit of oneness in the form of human unity, of oneness of humanity, and the oneness of all religions being part of a whole. And that we are followers of the God of oneness from the past. Well, this is Abrahamic in our own development. We are doing what Abraham did. We're making a covenant with God from this day forward, quote unquote. It's what Baha'is do when they sign a card. It's what a Christian does when they give their life to Christ and become baptized. It's what Jewish people do at bar mitzvah. They make a choice to serve, okay? But some people make this when they're 50 years old. Late in life, they realize that they need to go this place. The Judaic.
So we move to the Judaic stage, or the valley of knowledge and learning. Now here we have the concept of the rule of law, arts and sciences, reward and punishment, law and administration, scholarship and economics, righteousness and being religious.
This is the stage where we become rebellious to the law, or we realize that it is the foundation that we need to stand on. And that when the people of Israel obeyed the law of God, they became the leaders of arts and science. The Jewish people make up a small fragment of the human race.